So the 23rd of June marks International Women in Engineering Day, and to mark the occasion, we're joined by Eclipse Power CEO Emma Ford and one of our brilliant engineering graduates, Katherine Shaw, who'll be providing their insights on various themes such as career pathways in engineering, experiences as women in the field, and advice for those looking to break into engineering. So I'll just start off with Emma. So talking about International Women in Engineering Day, it's obviously a chance to celebrate people shaping our industry, and I just wanted to ask, what does the day mean to you?
So International Women in Engineering Day for me is a really important opportunity to both celebrate the progress that we have made across the industry, but also reinforce the massive responsibility that leaders have in keep driving the change that the industry needs. So throughout my career, I've been in asset intensive, traditionally male dominated environments like energy infrastructure. And I've seen, but also experienced firsthand, the difference when you have visible role models, inclusive cultures, and really intentional leadership. And for me, the day in terms of Women in Engineering Day is a recognition on the momentum that has been achieved across the industry. And it's also about recognising some amazing women that have shaped the future of engineering. And they've not just done it like single-handedly, they've done it where they've had some really impressive role models to be able to support them through that, and that's really, really important. And on a personal level, it's a really important moment to remind those that are around you that actually you've got a role to play in terms of supporting them. So it's my role to support individuals who really actually inspire me with their huge amount of energy, that next generation of females, and them feeling like they can be supported, confident, and then also thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And touching on some of those experiences, I remember one of the first conversations we had when you joined Eclipse, you told me quite a memorable story from your time working on wind turbines, and I was just wondering if you'd be able to share that story and why it stayed with you.
Yeah, so the experience that I had prior to joining Eclipse was quite a really powerful one, which was what it was like to be a female within a male-dominated environment. Like, the working offshore piece has its own challenges associated with it, with remote working, climbing to the top of the turbine, especially when you hate heights and you also get seasickness. But the biggest challenge for me when I was spending time offshore was actually speaking to the females and their experiences and how they've had to change the way in which they work to be able to feel like they're inclusive within those engineering environments. And that experience for me really opened my mind that in a world where there is a huge amount of forward thinking, where we've got AI and digital, where there are still challenges, where there aren't toilets on turbines, and individuals can't experience being able to go to the toilet. And for me, that's not just important for females, but it's also important for males. And it's actually a collective effort that we need as an industry to keep pushing forward at, to create those engineering environments to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, and it's great to keep talking about those experiences as well and reflect on them. And looking back at your career more holistically, are there any other moments or experiences that have perhaps shaped how you lead today?
Yeah, so I would say that there's probably been like a really important experience, which is there's a One Women in Utilities Network board director, where I really can see how actually that organisation makes a massive difference to where we're working and what we can do within society to help individuals out. And it is about, in that organisation, creating the visibility and really helping females build their confidence and strengthening in the leadership pipelines. So the differences that I've seen in that space is access to networks and role models. Like when you see at the networking events, individuals speaking to each other that normally would maybe not even cross, like we're an electricity company today, and you can see individuals speaking to others in the water sector, but actually the principles of what they're going after are really similar in terms of engineering and leadership roles. The other thing that you can see there is like the leadership development, so really equipping individuals for senior roles and giving individuals like the real true honesty. So I was at an event the other week, and at that event there was a lady there that was absolutely terrified about potentially standing on the stage with me to introduce a networking event, and she saw my hand, and on my hand was actually the lady's name that I was due to introduce, and she was like, oh wow, like, so why's my name on your hand? And I was like, because I have the same nerves. I've just learned over the years to be able to deal with those nerves. And fundamentally, my nervous thing is I forget names. Like, I'm amazing at faces, but when I'm nervous, I'm absolutely awful at names. So by having it printed on my hand, your hand, it removes that nervousness that I have when I stand on stage. And she was like, oh, so you're a human being too. And I'm like, yes, I am. To be able to go on the journey, I've had to experience different things. And I go back to a journey like right at the beginning when I was a consultant. I remember the days where I'd have to like write down everything that I was going to talk about on a telephone call before I dialed that magic number. Teams didn't exist in those days. And it's those moments when you realise that actually, you know, we all have those insecurities or those thoughts of overcomplicated things. And actually, do you know what? It's about sharing those experiences. And that is what One is about across the industry.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really glad you brought up One actually. So obviously you've seen the first-hand efforts being made to attract and support women in the utility sector. And obviously, like you said, visibility is kind of making the biggest difference. Where do you still think we've got work to do for women in the sector?
So I actually, even in this role, have had an experience that has really shocked me. And I don't think many people across the company are aware of this, because I, you know, come back across like pretty positive and try and inspire those that I work with. But something happened recently that was a bit of a surprise. So I have loved joining Eclipse and having the opportunity to lead Eclipse. I say this to the team a lot, and hopefully Anna and Katherine, you've heard it, but from day one, I felt I could be myself. And that is really, really powerful, because it means that I'm not wasting energy overthinking scenarios. It means that the business gets the best out of me. And I've been in a lot of situations where I've had to spend a lot of energy doing that, and it hasn't brought out the best in me. And it's very, very draining, because you are just overthinking scenarios. And I'm really lucky that I've inherited an organisation that does feel very diverse in nature. When you look around, there is, you know, a huge proportion of female representation, but there is also a huge proportion of individuals from different originations, diverse in terms of their thinking because they've worked in different organizations, diverse because of where they were born in the world. Like that is huge. But then when I step outside Eclipse, unfortunately, that's not what I see in the whole of the industry. And that, unfortunately, is sometimes the experiences that I really worry about for my own team. And recently, we had an experience where individuals, you could tell, were very uncomfortable about having females in the room. And that made me really, really sad in a way. And I thought, wow, this is like going back 10 years to the start of my career. But instead, I framed it in a different way, as Emma does. And I thought, what are we going to do in Eclipse to be able to really support everyone from multiple diverse backgrounds to do what we do at Eclipse, which is allow people to be themselves with our customers out there in the open world? What are we going to do? And I'm really excited because Women in Eclipse has been relaunched as a group, and I've really encouraged that group to really think about what do they need as the tools, so that when they walk into that environment and they might be the only female in the room, so they know that actually it's okay to be themselves. And do they know what they do to try and challenge some interesting behaviours that might be coming towards them in that environment? And that's what I want to sort of give them, the tricks of the trade, to be able to look past it and really bring the fantastic selves that they are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why it's good to keep talking about these experiences, like you said, because it's a shame that they happen, but as long as we keep talking about it, you can prepare people for those scenarios and what to do. So going to Katherine now. So Katherine is one of our engineering graduates at Eclipse, and it's also really great to have you both on the call because we've got different perspectives brought in with Emma, who's a leader in the industry, and Katherine, who's kind of stepping into the early days of your career. So I just wanted to ask first, Katherine, what sparked your interest in engineering?
Well, I come to engineering by way of physics, actually. So my undergraduate degree, and I've been very lucky to be in some great institutions. My undergraduate degree is actually from a women's college in the US, even though I was able to spend time outside, actually here in the UK during my undergraduate degree as well. And so when I was getting towards the end of my physics degree, which was very theoretical, I realized that I couldn't do what I wanted with my kind of climbing ambitions using theoretical physics in the way that maybe I had just understood at the time. And so when I realized that there was this like perfect fusion of my favorite parts of the mathematical beauty of physics and helping electrify the world in a way that's really beneficial for the climate, and how I see our future as having that kind of good turn coming forward into like my generation, your generation, new generations, I thought, oh, this is going to start my path into energy engineering. And so I come from a background that loves math even more, if we want to put in the STEM hierarchy into it. And that's what sparked my interest, was realizing how useful it could be to other ambitions that are helpful on a social level, and also being able to capture kind of that like real mathematical beauty of physics.
I love that. That's quite inspiring as well to hear that. And I guess also as someone at the start of your career, what has surprised you the most about the reality of being an engineer?
Oh my God, the administrative machines that underlie engineering companies are awe-inspiring. They really are. I had no idea as a student that like for any project that comes forward and actually gets energized, which if you think about it, it really is magic. Like you flip a light switch and it comes on, and that power is generated possibly a different country away. It's crazy. It's a miracle it still works. And it's not just a magical thing we made up. Um, when I was my student self, I didn't realize that there are so many really important ancillary services to engineering, whether that be abiding by regulation or just making sure you have all your ducks in a row. And so I have to say that really surprised me in a positive way, because you want to make sure you do it right the first time. And that might take longer, but it's worth the thoroughness in the end.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess moving on to the theme of this year's International Women Engineering Day. So the theme this year is engineering intelligence. So beyond the technical side of engineering, what skills or qualities do you think make a great engineer that people don't talk about enough?
Well, I would say I still have a lot to learn in that department. So I'd love to hear from Emma about what she thinks make a good and quality engineer. So far, the advice I've been given is to be really open and curious, have that, drive to have that ingenious and context as much as you can by yourself. But if you don't know what's going on in the project, ask. If you need to know if a connection can go around a tree, which is something that I've seen encountered at Eclipse, because let's say the client really wants the tree to stay there. Like, can you do that? Let's try and create some options. And so kind of curiosity and openness is something that I've been advised to have as I move forward. And I do want to hear what Emma has to say about what makes a good engineer, not for my own career, of course, just for the world to know.
So I think the best engineers that I ever work with are those that identify the problem but also go into solution mode. So I think it hangs off the point that you were raising in terms of curiosity. I think there has to be a rule book. Like, we have to be, safe in the work that we're doing. Electricity is, electrons are dangerous fundamentally. But I think sometimes where I've seen engineering pathways go a bit wild is where a problem is just laid out as a problem and that we don't go into some form of solution mode and actually explain in really simple terms without using a massive myriad of acronyms. And it's something that's really special about, I think, Eclipse, because we've got the consultancy business that is great at trying to find those solutions. And then within that, we've got a team of, massive passion that are great at explaining it depending on the level of knowledge of our customers. So some customers have their own in-house engineering electrical teams and they don't need, a ton of the hand holding. But then the other extreme, we've got customers who do need that hand holding piece. And that's what I would say is been those that have been the most remarkable engineers that I've worked with, is what's the solution to the problem, not just what is the problem statement.
I like that you mentioned the acronyms, because definitely this industry has far too many acronyms, but that's something that we've got such a wealth of knowledge at Eclipse. It's something I've really valued as a non-engineer.
Definitely.
And then just the last one to you, Catherine. Have there been any moments where you thought, and this might be Eclipse or this might be more generally, like, yes, this is exactly why I chose engineering?
When I was thinking about this question, I realized there's like one type of moment that I wonder if most people share about why they are drawn to general mathematics or engineering, is when you do something, you're trying to predict behavior, because ultimately, if you really boil it down, we're trying to predict something we want to make, and then we make it and make sure it runs correctly, smoothly, and safely. When you are trying to predict something and you put on all this time and intellect into it, and it actually works in the way that you identified it's supposed to work, there's no better feeling. There's no better feeling. And it started for me that when I was studying physics as a teenager, something as simple as Newtonian mechanics. Now, if now we can go into AI and everything, but being able to predict where a ball from a homemade launcher would land, I put a cup down and I launched the ball and it landed right in the cup. It was magic. I was like, oh, I just predicted the future. I was able to figure out where the ball was going to go. And so when those moments happen, and now you can kind of extrapolate it to more complicated things that are really big problems, like can we forecast demand? If we have demand flexibility, can we forecast the renewables integration into the industry? Like things that are really hard, but when you're able to get it right, that moment of like, oh, we've predicted something correctly, we've built something and it's working as we anticipated it would work. It's just like a beautiful feeling. I don't know if Emma agrees, but that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, we did it.
The most probably energizing point, which is crazy when I work in an energizing business, but basically that I had was we were working on bringing an interconnector back online after a significant fire, and it was a year and a half of really solid 24-hour working, and we had to test it in terms of like ramping up the megawatts, and that feeling of the first electrons flowing was just amazing, and you just can't replace that feeling. So I completely agree, Catherine.
I love that. And then opening up the floor to both of you, what's one thing about being a woman in engineering that you wish more people understood? If Emma, you'd like to go first.
Okay, so I think, and I actually think this is just inclusivity as a whole, if that makes sense. I think sometimes people think that actually you can churn in your job without having any space to be able to think, especially in the engineering. So when you're in an engineering space, they think, well, you're trained to utilize a manual, etc. Absolutely, that's where my training is all about soil and like how soil works, like geotechnical engineering. But fundamentally, there was some core principles that I learned. But it's really important that to be able to get the really creative side of me and the real thought processes, you need to give me the space to think. And the space sometimes doesn't come from actually sitting at the desk, looking at a drawing, trying to like work out a solution. It might come in the really wacky moments when I'm like walking across the playground, picking up my son, those might be the points at which you go, wow. So I think it's not necessarily like I'm sort of putting the female angle on it in relation to, you know, my son and all the rest of it, but that could be exactly the same with my male counterpart. But it is about creating that space to enable that creativity to come alive.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then same to you, Catherine. Is there one thing about being a woman in engineering you wish more people understood?
I think the idea also of the kind of segmentation of like what is it about being a woman in engineering, it's really pleasant when you're on a team, and Emma has already mentioned sort of the fostering of sort of values at Eclipse, and to put it in Gen Z language, vibes at Eclipse. When you're in a team and everyone just acknowledges you're like there to do good work, and there's a kind of camaraderie where you feel like you aren't the only one in the room. It does happen. I would say there are other times when you get kind of maybe odd looks or a pointed question about where you got your degree or something like that. But fundamentally, when people arrive, they're like there to do good work, and they want to, in my case, like learn about other parts of the business, which I haven't been exposed to yet, or other parts of the industry that are really interesting, because it's a very complex kind of total whole system industry. And when you get to those places, it doesn't feel like you're segmented into a separate section. And that is the ultimate goal. And it does exist. So if you're thinking about being a woman in engineering, you know, you should have those little moments of confidence that boost you up, but also know that you'll get to hopefully a place where you feel like, you know, you're just doing the work, you're just showing up, having a hopefully decent time, and making good products.
No, that's great. Some great insight. And then obviously with International Women Engineering Day, we couldn't have this call and not talk about the figures. So 2025 figures indicate that in the UK, only 16.9% of engineers are women. So if you could change one perception that young women have about engineering careers, what would it be? If we go to you first, Catherine.
Sure. The story that came to mind, like immediately with this question, and it is changing, but when I was studying physics, and like I said, I went to a women's university, which had lots of linking with other types of universities, but it created a pretty unique environment where there wasn't any striation in classrooms, because you could almost remove that element to a certain extent, which I found really helpful for my first years into it. And when I was studying physics, I encountered a freshman when I was a senior who was in her first physics class. Was pretty excited and liked it, was asking me about future courses. And it's very common at uni. And she goes, "Oh, it doesn't really matter though, I can't major in that." And I was like, "Why can't you major in it?" "Of course, I'm majoring in it. It's wonderful." And she said, "Well, my family would never let me, because it's not a ladylike major to have. So maybe I'll minor, but I can't major in that." And that story is obviously a bit of an outlier, because I hope that many families who send their kids to college would be overjoyed if they chose physics or engineering. But it goes to the point that many industries still have perception and reality, like you said, with the 16% figure, that it's a more masculine industry or it's a more feminine industry, because there is also the counter to that. And what I would hope could be a change in perception for young women entering the industry. It doesn't have to be that way. And you yourself can change the perception of that industry within one generation. And so if you want to go into something, like do it. Don't let the perception of the type of industry it is hold you back from the beauty of engineering or physics or anything like that. So if I could change your perception, and one thing is, don't think of it as like a masculine energy discipline or a feminine energy discipline. Just think of it as something you like, something that you're good at, something that you want to contribute to. And then you'll have kind of a well of inspiration to draw from, even if you hit a hard moment.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely still some stigma that we need to get away from in the industry. And then over to you, Emma. If you could change one perception that young women have about engineering careers, what would it be?
I'm not actually. I'm going to reverse the question, and it doesn't mean I'm going to ask you the question, so don't panic, Anna. I actually want to say, like, what can men do? So if someone inspires you or someone really energizes you, find a way to lift them up, whether it's male, female, it costs you nothing. And that's what I think is really, really important. Like, look past what that person looks like and say, what can I do to help? If you're within the engineering sector and you can see like a potential like summer placement or something that might inspire those individuals, we all have a role to play. Like, fundamentally, on average, there are 50% of females in society, 50% of males in society. That means that in a world where we need engineering expertise more and more, we should be, all of us, having a responsibility and a part to play in actually encouraging both males and females into what is a really exciting sector. It is the future, and that starts right from its own infancy. Like, for me, my son, who's 6, he's got a book called How is Electricity Made, right? And it's got all the flaps and all the rest of it, and he loves his mummy reading it to him because he knows it's the industry that I work within. And for me, he doesn't recognize whether it's a male or a female that has written that book or the pictures that are in there. They're completely diverse pictures. Like, he can't see it. So there comes a point in our society where there must be like some lamp that goes on that says, oh, well, those girls can't come and play, or those boys are the only ones that can come and do some engineering work. It's actually on all of us to look past that and realise that actually society is made up of individuals, that it's 50-50 and anyone can enter into the sector. And I think if you see someone with like that initial like excitement about it, try and enthuse them with it. Like, another toy that I gave to my son was one where you make like circuits, and I must show you, Katherine, because you'll probably get excited by it as well. And it like has a design book on like how to make the different circuits and alarms and things like that. Now, whether he was a boy or a girl, I'd still do it if he showed a bit of interest in it. And I think that's the real thing that we've all got a part to play as society. So it's not girls that need to own it, it's actually all of us that needs to own it.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great perspective to have. Thank you, Emma. And then just closing off, what do you hope the next generation of women entering engineering will experience that perhaps previous generations didn't? If we stay with you, Emma, for this one.
My dream, but I'm also a realist, is that I hope no one experiences the situations that I've come across within the industry or that I've watched colleagues go through. When I've watched leadership teams be really, really diverse, and then suddenly diversity from a new leader is stripped out overnight, that breaks my heart. And for me, I really hope that, you know, the next generation, that anyone that sits around a leadership table, sits within a team, who has earned their right to be there, feels like they've got a part to play and they've got nothing to prove.
That's a really great response. Thank you. Katherine, any final words from you for the same question?
I think it plays a lot off Emma's response, but from the side of the person who's been invited, you don't want to feel the pressure of representing your whole gender. And so I hope that people who come into the utilities or any industry really doesn't feel the pressure of representing their gender. The question of, if I make a mistake, will they never hire anyone who looks like me again? And so I really hope that it would be a relief if just every individual was judged on their own potential, and you can strip it back to who's enthusiastic and who's right for the role, and you don't feel like you're having a job interview when you're showing up at work. That'd be a big relief for, I think, future employees of utilities and hopefully all industries.
Yeah, and that's a really great point to close on, I think. So thank you, Katherine and Emma, for joining. Your insights have been really valuable. And thank you everyone for listening in. So from everyone at Eclipse, I hope everyone has an amazing International Women in Engineering Day 2026. Thank you.
Bye.